In 1993, a psychologist named Anders Ericsson published a study that quietly destroyed one of the most comforting lies human beings have ever told themselves. He studied violinists at the Berlin Academy of Music. He divided them into three groups: the ones the professors believed would become world-class soloists, the ones good enough to play professionally, and the ones who would likely become music teachers. Then he asked all of them one question: how many hours have you practiced since you first picked up a violin? The answer changed everything we thought we knew about talent, discipline, and who gets to be extraordinary. The world-class soloists had practiced an average of 10,000 hours by age 20. The professional players had averaged 8,000. The future teachers had averaged 4,000. No exceptions, no outliers. The researchers found no evidence of anyone who reached the top without the hours, and no evidence of anyone who put in the hours and did not reach a level of genuine mastery. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in a book that sold 10 million copies and gave the world the 10,000-hour rule. But what Gladwell did not emphasize, and what Ericsson spent the rest of his career trying to correct, is the part that actually matters. It was not just the hours. It was what happened inside the hours, the quality of the practice, the specific architecture of how extraordinary people spend their time when they are working. That is what separates the chosen few from everyone else who puts in the time and stays exactly where they are. That is what this video is about. And in the next 15 minutes, I am going to show you exactly what that architecture looks like and how to build it starting today. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school varsity basketball team, not asked to sit on the bench. Cut, told he was not good enough. He was 5 feet 10 inches tall, and the coach chose a 6'7" player instead. The boy who would become the greatest basketball player in the history of the sport was told at 15 that he was not talented enough. He went home and cried. And then he did something that the science of expertise now calls deliberate practice for the next decade, with an intensity that his coaches described as otherworldly. Not because he had more talent, because he decided that the word talent was not going to be the thing that decided his life. Carol Dweck at Stanford spent 30 years studying tens of thousands of students and discovered something that should be taught in every school in America. Students who believed their intelligence was fixed performed significantly worse over time than students who believed their intelligence could grow. Not because of actual differences in brain capacity, because of the story they told themselves about what effort meant. The fixed mindset student thinks effort means, I am not talented. The growth mindset student thinks effort means I am getting better. Same action, different story, completely different life trajectory. Talent is not the door. Talent is the story you tell yourself about whether you are allowed to walk through it. And the chosen few figured out very early that the door was never locked in the first place. Most people practice. Almost nobody practices deliberately. And the difference between those two things is the difference between 20 years of mediocrity and 5 years of mastery. Here is what regular practice looks like. You do the thing. You get comfortable at the thing. You keep doing the thing at the level you are comfortable at. You get a little better. You plateau. You stay on the plateau for years, telling yourself you are still working on it while your brain runs on autopilot through the same patterns it learned 3 years ago. Here is what deliberate practice looks like. You identify the specific thing you cannot do yet. You design exercises that target exactly that weakness. You perform those exercises at the edge of your current ability, where it is unauthorized and uncomfortable and you are making mistakes. You get immediate feedback. You adjust. You repeat until the weakness becomes strength. Then you find the next weakness and start again. Benjamin Franklin taught himself to write at the highest level in America by taking essays from The Spectator magazine, the most respected publication of his era, writing down the ideas in his own words, then comparing his version to the original to find every place where his expression was weaker. He did this obsessively for years. He was not naturally gifted. He was deliberately building. Tiger Woods at age 3 was already practicing golf for hours under the instruction of his father Earl. who was a student of military psychology and understood the architecture of skill acquisition before most coaches ever heard the term. By the time Tiger turned professional, he had already logged more deliberate practice hours than most golfers accumulate in an entire career. The world called it talent. His father knew exactly what it was. Constructed excellence, built piece by piece in the garage and on the driving range before anyone was watching. There is a city in the Dominican Republic called San Pedro de Macorís, population 200,000, by any measure a small, unremarkable city in a developing nation. And yet this single city has produced more Major League Baseball players per capita than any other place on earth. Hundreds of players, dozens of all-stars, multiple Hall of Famers, from 200,000 people in a city most Americans have never heard of. This is not genetics. The Dominican Republic is not biologically different. This is environment. In San Pedro de Macorís, baseball is not a hobby. It is the architecture of daily life. Every afternoon, the streets and fields fill with children practicing. The culture treats the development of this specific skill as something serious and worthy of total investment. MIT neuroscience research confirms what the Dominican Republic demonstrates in real life. The brain forms neural pathways in direct response to the demands of the environment. A brain placed in an environment that requires mastery develops the pathways for mastery. A brain placed in an environment that requires nothing develops the pathways for nothing. This means something profound and practical for your life right now. You do not just need to change your habits. You need to change your environment so that the habits you need become the path of least resistance rather than the path of most effort. The chosen few do not have more willpower. They have better environments. They design the space around them to make the right work unavoidable. The books are on the desk, not the shelf. The gym bag is by the door. The phone is in another room. The workspace is dedicated and serious. The people around them are moving in the direction they want to go. Environment is not background. Environment is destiny. James Clear spent years studying science of habit formation and published his findings in a book called Atomic Habits that has now sold over 15 million copies. The central insight is not the one most people quote. Most people quote the 1% better everyday idea. But the deeper insight is this. The most effective way to change your behavior long-term is not to focus on what you want to achieve. It is to focus on who you want to become. Every action you take is a vote for the identity you are building. When you go to the gym, you are not just exercising. You are casting a vote for the identity of someone who takes care of their body. When you write for 30 minutes, you are not just writing. You are casting a vote for the identity of a writer. When you practice the uncomfortable skill, you are not just practicing. You are casting a vote for the identity of someone who does not stop when it gets hard. The chosen few do not think I am trying to be disciplined. They think this is who I am. Discipline is not something they do. It is something they are. And that identity shift from trying to being is the accelerant that changes the entire trajectory. Muhammad Ali did not become the greatest boxer in history because he trained hard. He became it because he decided he was the greatest before the evidence existed to support the claim. He said, "I am the greatest," not because he had already won, but because the identity had to exist first for the achievement to follow. You are building an identity right now. The question is whether you are building it deliberately or letting your circumstances build it for you. The chosen few took the pen out of the hands of their circumstances and started writing for themselves. That is available to you today, in this moment. I want to show you the dark matter, the invisible substance behind every extraordinary life that makes the visible achievements possible. Kobe Bryant woke up at 3:45 every morning for 20 years to practice before his teammates arrived at 9. Not occasionally, not when he felt motivated. Every single morning for 2 decades. His trainer, Tim Grover, described arriving at 4 a.m. and finding Kobe already drenched in sweat, having been going for over an hour. By the time his NBA peers showed up for their first practice of the day, Kobe had already completed what most players would consider a full training session. Over 20 years, that is approximately 7,000 extra sessions that nobody ever counted. 7,000 practices that never appeared in a box score. 7,000 mornings of choosing the work before the sun came up and before anyone was watching. Stephen King has written a novel every single year for over 40 years. He writes 2,000 words every day without exception. Christmas, his birthday, the day after surgery. 2,000 words. He does not wait for inspiration. He treats writing the way a plumber treats plumbing. You show up, you do the work, you go home, you come back tomorrow and do it again. This is the dark matter, the invisible discipline. The unglamorous, repetitive daily practice that produces the visible result that the world calls genius or talent or luck. It is none of those things. It is a decision made every single day to show up for the work, whether or not the work feels worthy of showing up for. The chosen few are not more inspired. They are more committed to showing up on the days when inspiration is completely absent. And those days are most days. That is the secret hidden in plain sight behind every extraordinary life you have ever admired. If you get 1% better at something every single day for 1 year, you will be 37 times better by the end of that year. Not 1% better, not 10% better, 37 times better. The mathematics of compounding applied to human development produces results that look impossible from the starting point and inevitable from the ending point. Warren Buffett made 99% of his entire net worth after his 50th birthday. He started investing at 11. He had been building for 39 years before most of the result was visible. The compound effect does not look like much for a very long time, and then it looks like everything all at once. Most people quit during the plateau, the long flat middle where the work is consistent but the results are invisible. The chosen few have studied the compound effect enough to know that the plateau is not a signal that it is not working. It is a signal that the foundation is being laid for an exponential jump that most people never get to see because they left before it arrived. Roger Federer did not win his first Grand Slam until he was 21 years old. He had been training seriously since age 8. 13 years of deliberate practice and visible results that were good but not yet legendary. Then the compound effect reached its exponential phase, and he won 20 Grand Slams and became the most technically perfect tennis player most experts had ever observed. The seeds you plant today will not be trees tomorrow. But in 10 years, you will either be standing in a forest or standing in an empty field, wondering why you never planted anything. The chosen few plant every day, without exception, without needing to see the tree yet. I want to bring you back to Anders Ericsson and the Berlin violinists, because there is one final piece of that research that almost nobody talks about. The world-class players treated their practice hours as sacred, undisturbed, fully present, no divided attention, no distraction, no going through the motions. Complete cognitive engagement with the specific difficulty in front of them for the entire duration of the session, and then they rested completely. Full recovery, either fully on or fully off. This means something important. The chosen few are not superhuman. They are not grinding every waking hour. They are extraordinarily focused for specific protected periods, and then they are completely off. The intensity of the on is what produces the result, not the length of the on. You do not need more hours. You need better hours. Here is what the research of Ericsson and Dweck and Clear and every serious student of extraordinary human performance converges on in the end. The difference between the chosen few and everyone else is not talent. It is not luck. It is not circumstance of birth or advantage of resources. It is one decision made repeatedly. The decision to engage fully with the difficulty of becoming better rather than retreating to the comfort of staying the same. Michael Jordan was cut from the team. Benjamin Franklin had no formal education. Tiger Woods was 3 years old in a garage. Kobe Bryant was in the gym before the sun rose. Stephen King writes 2,000 words on Christmas morning. Roger Federer planted seeds for 13 years before the forest arrived. None of them were chosen by fate or fortune. They chose themselves. every single day. In the small moments that nobody watched and nobody counted and nobody celebrated, you were already chosen. The question is whether you choose yourself back. Start today, not with everything, with one thing, the one skill, the one practice, the 1 hour of complete, undivided, deliberate attention that begins building the compound effect that in 5 years and 10 years will look to everyone watching like genius or talent or luck. It will not be any of those things. It will be you, showing up every day, in the dark, before anyone was watching, building the life that ordinary people will call extraordinary because they never saw the work that made it inevitable. The chosen few are not born, they are built, 1 deliberate hour at a time. Go, build.